All right, folks, good. Let's call the meeting of the July 28th Planning Commission in order. I'm Kevin Jeffers, Chairman. It's great to be back for our second meeting in person. We met the July 14th meeting, had a special called meeting, and it's always good to be back in the courtroom here. So we'll go ahead. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody here, if you have a cell phone, to please either turn it off or turn it on vibrate so it doesn't interfere with the cameras here in the courtroom. And if you would join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. With that, before we get started with the approval of our minutes, I'd like to get the staff sworn in. McIntyre?
Do you swear to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. With that, we have two sets of minutes, Commissioners, that we need to approve here this morning. We have our set from our special called meeting of July 14th, and I believe you have a copy of those. I'd like to get a motion on the floor to approve those. Got a motion, Mr. Halfling? Okay. Got a motion, second, Mr. Elder. Now, is there any additions or corrections we need to make to the special called meeting minutes from July 14th? Any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to vote on approval of the July 14th special meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, minutes from July 14th have been approved. Next set of minutes are for approval of the June 23rd Commission regular meeting minutes. Have a motion for Mr. Elder, second for Mr. Halfling, to approve those minutes. Now, do we have any additions or corrections to those sets of minutes? Any additions or corrections we need to make to those minutes? Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at page 2, close to the bottom, just above conditions of approval, the final sub-bullet, reasons outlined in the applicant's justification statement, which has been incorporated into the record. Somehow or another, that didn't flow right for me. Maybe I'm mistaken. Reasons outlined in the applicant's justification statement, which I guess it's the plural. Reasons outlined.
Okay.
Which have been incorporated into the record might be the,
Well, it's the statement has been.
Okay.
Statement is singular.
all right. Fair enough, I'll leave it alone.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? All right. With not seeing any additional corrections, we'll proceed to vote on the minutes from our June 23rd meeting. All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the June 23rd meeting minutes have been approved. All right. We'll move into the first public hearing, and I'll call on Mr. McIntyre to read our first docketed item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Docket PZ 20-009, an application has been filed by Jonathan Boneline for approval of a residential use waiver to allow a residential use in an industrially zoned district and a front yard setback variance for an existing tract located at 2320 Fenley Mill Road in LaGrange. The zoning is I2 heavy industrial.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'll ask Ms. Alvey if she will introduce the docket to the commission.
Good morning, Amy Alvey, Assistant Director for Oldham County Planning and Development Services. As Mr. McIntyre stated, this is an application for a residential use waiver and also a front yard setback variance. The property is located at 2320 Fenley Mill Road in LaGrange. It's approximately 9.1 acres and is zoned I2 heavy industrial. This is an aerial view of the property outlined in red. Yeah. And our equipment has not been updated yet, so if you can't see it on your screen, you'll have to turn and look at that. the big screen back there. We can't switch between computer and the overhead. So this is the current zoning, which is I2. Heavy industrial, again, you'll see it's surrounded by AG1 agricultural, and then this track, original track, actually looped around an adjoiner. So that's why you see I2 to the south as well. So you'll see there. Site history. On February 18th, 1999, the Oldham County Board of Adjustments approved a conditional use permit for a minor soil extraction request. That was docket 3438. A condition was placed on that conditional use permit that it must be renewed every 2 years. And again, this was for that whole parent track. And then it was renewed again in May of 2002. So a minor plat was approved in August of 2018 to create the applicant's track. You'll see here it does have a large 210-foot electrical easement that runs through the middle of it there. So this was the plat that was approved and recorded back in 2018. And it was owned by Terry Clark at that time. The applicant is requesting a residential use waiver to construct a new home on the property, zoned I2, which does not allow residential uses as a permitted or conditional use. The property currently has 680 square foot mobile home located on it, and the applicant is going to remove the mobile home and construct a new home on the property. The current mobile home has been on the property for 30 plus years. The existing mobile home is considered a non-conforming use because it has existed for more than 10 years and has not been subject to any adverse order or action by the administrator. However, non-conforming uses cannot be expanded, and the applicant's proposed new home will be larger than 680 square feet. So staff recommended that he come and apply for a residential use waiver. So this is an aerial view of the property here. You can't really see the mobile home that's there, but on the PVA website they had a historical picture that shows the mobile home. Per the applicant's justification statement, requiring the property rezoned for residential use would be an exceptional financial hardship. The property has historically been used for residential purposes, and the proposed new home will be an improvement to the area. The applicant is also requesting a front yard setback variance of 50 feet. Per section 200.020, the required front yard setback in I2 heavy industrial is 100 feet. The surrounding properties are zoned AG1 and CO1, which all have a required front yard setback of 50 feet. Per the applicant's justification statement, regarding the variance, if the home was placed at the 100-foot required setback, substantial trees would have to be removed. And also, if allowed to be at the 50-foot setback, the home location would be similar to others in the area. So this is approximately where the new home would be located. Again, you can see from the clearings there, that's the 210-foot electrical transmission line easement that runs through the property. This is an adjoining property, which is across the street and down a little ways, and so you'll see that's from the edge of pavement. Where I took that picture is from the edge of pavement to the home. This is the north view on Finley Mill. This applicant's property is right in the curve. You'll see where the star is located on the map there. This is the east adjoining property. This is another farm that's located across the road. This is the south view, so this is looking down Finley Mill Road going back towards LaGrange and towards the home that I previously showed you. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval of a residential use waiver and also a front yard setback request of 50 feet. That is all that I'll have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Alvey. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Do you have any questions? Yep, yes, sir, Mr. Finney.
What is the, difference in requesting a waiver versus getting a zoning change in this particular instance?
Sure. So if the applicant was required to go through the rezoning process, you're looking at a 6 to 8 month time period. They have to have a development plan. They have to have an attorney, basically to reuse the property. He would have to rezone it to residential or rezone it to agricultural to be able to have a residential use on it. So you're looking at time and the expense of those applications as well as legal fees.
Okay, thank you.
And just seeking the waiver is an allowable procedure in our regulations. It says specifically you can come and do that. So, and we have done that in a number of situations. Again, it's all up to you on whether the evidence shows that we should do this, but.
And previously, we had tiered zoning, so anything that was zoned industrial, like I-2, which is our most intense zoning classification, you could do anything as a permitted use, that was listed as a permitted use in other zoning classifications. So if we still had tiered zoning, he would be able to move through as he sees fit to put a home on it. Because you could do anything that was a permitted use in I-1, all the commercials, and all the residentials as well. But we no longer have tiered zoning. I think that
Right.
went away, Jim, in 2006 or 7.
Then again, this seems kind of an odd spot for that heavy industrial out there in the middle of agriculture. What,
It's near the quarry. It's across the street from the rock quarry, from Joe Clark's
okay,
rock quarry.
okay.
Yeah, so it's on both
because I know
sides.
it sits right across from
Warren's.
the farm there, because I've sprayed and done work on that farm, yeah, yeah. 'cause that
Yeah,
was-
Johnny
okay.
Warren's, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Sam, there was the concrete plant was out there, and so there were several, kind of heavy industrial uses years ago. So, any additional questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll move in now to the presentation by the applicant or representative and others in support of the application. If we could, I'd like to get you sworn in, and then we'll get your name and address for the record.
Can I pull this down?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
Swear to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Just name and address, please.
Jonathan Boneline, current address that I'm residing at? Is that a question?
Yeah, that's fine.
7204 Michael Benjamin Circle, Crestwood, Kentucky, 4001.
Would you spell your last name, please?
Bohnlein.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Just a general idea of what I want to do with the land and why. Is that all you're
Sure.
asking for? I mean, I saw this opportunity to buy this land out in Oldham County. I've lived here in Oldham County for my whole life, except for the 5 years I went into the Marine Corps. I came back and I saw this opportunity to purchase land in LaGrange. I've gone to church here at Immaculate Conception. So long-term, I just want to maintain the land, build a house, and live here for the rest of my life. It's pretty simple.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you want to add, or is that, okay?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much summarizes it.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in support of? I don't see too many folks in the audience today, but that's our process and our procedure, so. All right, well, with that, we'll move in to the testimony and questioning of those opposing the application. Is there anybody here that would be opposed to this application? Okay, there again, don't see many folks in the audience, so is there anything, let's see, we'll move into questioning of the applicant by the commission. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, do you have a final statement you'd like to make on behalf of your application?
I think I pretty much said it in the opening statement.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And, all right, that would be, we'll move down to the, docket PZ 20009 is completed. And at this point, I'll call on Mr. Urban and Mr. Carter to outline what's being requested here.
Well, there are two simple applications here. One is for the residential use waiver, and as always in your staff report, on page 2, you have a beginning of a motion for either approval or denial. There's only one condition of that, and that is that the waiver shall only apply to a plan reviewed at this meeting. It's actually the July 28th meeting of the Planning Commission. And that's, you got to consider that first to make sure that you're all in accord with being able to use it residentially.
Okay? Anything else, Mr. Urban? Nope. Okay, Mr. Carter, anything you need to add? No. Okay. Commissioners, we, at this point, on docket PZ 20009, the chair would entertain a motion for a residential use waiver that's being requested. Do we have a motion for that residential use waiver? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move for approval of the residential use waiver as requested. Based on evidence and testimony presented, we find that the property has been used not for industrial purposes, but has been used for residential purposes for the site history that is presented at the very least, and that the proposed use is appropriate and based on the plan presented, do not represent any circumvention of the basic objectives of the regulations.
Mr. Carter, is that an adequate motion? Yes, it is. Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Hampton seconds. All right, now, any discussion on the motion on docket PZ 20009 for approval of a residential use waiver? Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands go up, we'll now proceed to vote, and I'll call on Mr. McIntyre to proceed with the vote. This is a motion to approve the residential use waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Davis? Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Halfley?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
All right, the motion to approve the residential use waiver on docket PZ 20009 has been approved on a vote of 9-0. All right, at this point, I'll ask Mr. Urban if he would outline what's on the front yard setback variance.
Now that you've determined that it's appropriate to use this property for residential purposes, the required setback in the industrial zoning is 100 feet, and there's a request to reduce that to 50 feet for reconstruction of a house. And so on page 3 in your staff report are sample motions, and again, there's only one condition that would be placed on it, that it shall only apply to the application considered at the July 28, 2020 Planning Commission public hearing.
Okay. Mr. Carter, anything you need to add? No. All right. With that, the chair will now entertain a motion on the request for the front yard setback variance. We have a motion on the front yard setback variance. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'll move for approval of the variance as requested. Again, based on testimony and evidence presented, I do not find there is any adverse effect to public health, safety, or welfare, nor is there any alteration to the essential character of the general vicinity. In fact, based on the plan presented, those uses tend to be consistent with surrounding properties in this respect.
And do you want to include in that motion, this is a good place to put the approval of the binding element or condition of approval that it's for this plan only?
I would like to incorporate that into the motion as well. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Carter, anything needs to be added? No. Okay. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, got Mr. Halfling seconds. All right, now any discussion on the motion to approve the requested front yard setback variance? Attached binding elements. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call on Mr. McIntyre then to do the vote, and this is a motion to approve the front yard setback variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Halfley?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
All right, on docket PZ 20009, the requested front yard setback variance has been approved on a vote of 9-0. All right, thank you all. With that, we'll move right on into our next docketed item, and I'll call on Mr. McIntyre again, if he would, to read that docket, please.
docket PZ 20010. An application has been filed by C. Richard Smith for the approval of a minor plat with waiver, 5-year rule, on approximately 98.3 acres. Property is located at 6600, at the 6600 block of Old Jaring Road in Crestwood. The zoning is R2 Residential District and CO1 Conservation District.
All right, thank you. And again, I'll call on Ms. Alvey to introduce the docket, please.
Sure. As Mr. McIntyre stated, this is a request for a waiver of the minor plat rule regulation that allows more than 2 divisions within 5 years. The property is zoned R2 residential and C1 conservation as an approximately 98.3 acres. Excuse me. This is an aerial view of the property outlined in red. This shows the current zoning. The lighter color there in yellow is R2, and then this area here in green is the CO1 conservation. The applicant is proposing to create 4 tracts from one existing 98 plus or minus acre tract. You'll see this is the proposed layout of the tract there. The history on the property: in April of 2019, the applicant created and sold off 2 2-acre tracts of land from the farm in order to supplement farm finances because of a family's medical care, and that came from the applicant's justification statement. And then in February of 2020, tract 2 was revised to go from 2 acres to 4 acres. So the original division line was right here. So this was one tract, this was a separate tract, but then they came and adjusted the line and moved it over at the buyer's request to have 4 acres. So that was the first 2 sell-offs there. So this kind of gives you a location of where those 2 tracts are in relation to the residual farm. According to the definition of section 2.2 of the subdivision regulations, a minor subdivision is a subdivision of land into not more than 3 lots within 5-year time period and not involving a new public street or private road. The definition of a major subdivision is a subdivision of land into 4 or more lots, or any subdivision involving a new public street or private road. Also, any divisions of land beyond 3 lots within 5-year time period from a parent tract or tract divided therefrom. So the applicant is proposing the following lot configuration, which would allow additional sell-offs. So this would be a total of 5 within the 5-year time frame. So tracts 1 and 2 were created by minor plats in February and April of 2020. And then the applicant is proposing to create tracts A, B, C, and D, which the first 3 are approximately 30 acres, and then tract D is 9.9. So this is the proposed layout here. You'll see the 4 proposed tracts there. The applicant intends to sell the 3 30-acre tracts and retain the 9.9 acre tract. The applicant's justification statement states the following. Due to aging, the property upkeep has become harder to keep the farm looking as nice as it should be. The entire farm has been on the market, and there has been no interest in the 98 acres, but interest in smaller tracts. And the tracts will have deed restrictions, which would prohibit any further division of land and only allow 1 primary residence to be built on each tract. So this is the entrance to 6600 Old Zaring Road. You'll see that's the little cutout there where the star is located. This is the west view on Old Zaring Road, so this is going towards the Crestwood Brownsboro area. This is further down Old Zaring Road. This is the north view, so this is across the street. This is the east view, so this is going back towards, Buckner. Again, this is another north view, so this is across the street, so this is an adjoining property here. And then this is tract 1. This is the home that's being being constructed on tract 1. So that's the one sell-off that was done earlier in 2020. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval for a waiver of the minor plat regulation and approval of the minor plat as presented. That is all that I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Alvey, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question. It's probably for John Carter. The question I would have, if we approve this minor plat construction, and we're gonna be deed restrictions, how long do the deed restrictions carry with the property? Or if the person who buys that minor plat decides 2 years from now, he's gonna subdivide it into 3 acres or, 4 plots, in other words, the deed restrictions, what's the longevity of that?
If it is in the deed restriction goes with the property to all subsequent owners of the property. Now, any of the adjacent property owners could enforce it and enforce the deed restrictions, and we could too, so.
Okay, I was just curious if he could go in and try to get the restrictions changed or go back to the original seller or ask for a waiver.
No, it stays with the land. It goes with the land to all subsequent owners.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman, also,
Oh, yes.
I neglected to provide, Jim Silliman, our county engineer, provided a letter. It says, with regard to the review of the proposed minor plat, based on the cursory field check and desk review, it appears future driveways will be able to be located on each subdivided tract to provide recommended site distance for ingress onto Old Zering Road. Applicants requesting a driveway for each of these tracts shall comply with current road encroachment guidelines at the time of road encroachment application. For reference, I have attached a current Oldham County road encroachment permit guidelines for driveway site distance. And then we also, I emailed out and then also provided a copy to each one of you today. There were 2 letters of support from adjoining property owners. This is from Karen Campbell that says, we have received and reviewed information packet regarding the above referenced docket. We strongly support for approval of the requested waiver permitting the sale of 3 parcels as requested. The requested division of the property is appropriate for our area and will have minimal impact on the roads and infrastructure. And then I also received an email from Mark Timmons, who is also an adjoining property owner, that states, we have owned property in this neighborhood for over 30 years. We fully support the plan brought forward by C. Richard Smith that divides the tract into 3 parcels with single residence on each. It is our opinion that this type of growth is appropriate and consistent with existing properties along Old Zering Road. Mark and Jacqueline Timmons. Forgot to read those into the record.
Okay, all right. Any additional questions for staff before we move into the presentation by the applicant? Okay, I don't see any hands go up, so with that, thank you, Ms. Alvey. And now we'll move into the presentation by the applicant or representative and others in support of the application. Mr. Smith, I would assume that would be you. I'd like to get both of you sworn in, and we'll get your name and address for the record. McIntyre?
Swear to say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you all for your time. We'll be brief. This is my wife, Rebecca Smith.
Good morning.
Morning.
I lost one of my hearing aids over the weekend, so she's my translator this morning. So basically, it's exactly as Alfie explained it, and as I wrote in the application, I've lived and farmed the Brownsboro Buckner area since 1987, and we currently own and farm approximately 1,200 acres in that area. And I turned 66 this spring. It's harder for me to keep everything like I would like for it to look on the farms. And additionally, in 2018, we had a family member diagnosed with a degenerative disease that has required some funds, and I don't own stocks and bonds. Since 1987, I've invested in Oldham County land, and while that's been a good investment, it's just not always real liquid. And it's important to note that directly across the road from this 100 acres, we are retaining 400 acres. So these people that we're going to be selling this property to are going to be ongoing neighbors of ours for a long time. The D property we are retaining because our son Wes Smith and daughter-in-law Danielle Smith are going to build, they have planned at least to build down in that area, probably across from it. That's the reason that we're retaining that. And then the plat that we submitted is very preliminary. We didn't want to invest a lot getting a full-blown plat, but we will submit a much better plat, you know, if we get approval for this. And the deed restriction allowing only one resident per parcel, and allowing no more subdivision of each parcel will not only be written into the deed restrictions, but it'll also be written into the deed itself. And as Mr. Carter said correctly, that does go with the land, and so that cannot be reversed by somebody later on.
I think that's got it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Anything else that y'all like to add, or did that complete your presentation?
Yes. Complete your presentation, yes. Sure.
Right. All righty. With that, I don't believe there's anyone else here in support of the application, or anybody here that would like to testify in opposition to or have questions. So we'll move into, I guess, questions of the commissioners. Ms. Davis.
I have a question. In the deed restrictions, will you have
Sure,
restrictions
microphone on.
Is your mic on?
Will you have a deed restriction that will require them to build a certain kind of home?
Yes, we do. We put deed restrictions on lot 1 and 2, and we've modified those a little bit because, like on lot 1 and 2, we wouldn't let people have livestock, and on these lot A, B, and C, we'll let them have certain numbers of livestock and what have you. But we definitely, yes, have deed restrictions on all of them with certain numbers of, you know, the size of the house and.
Okay, so you do have it the
Outbuildings.
size of the house and the kind of house.
Outbuildings as well on A, B, and C, different from the lots of 1 and 2 because there's more acreage, so.
So will there be any manufactured homes allowed to be placed on those properties?
No.
No.
No, it's strictly, and we've got a draft of those here. If you know, if you all would like to have a copy of those, we'd be glad to leave those with you. We didn't have those, and we're still tweaking them, but they're principally done at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mr. Smith and his wife? Yep, yes, sir, Mr. Urban.
I actually have one. It's fairly common today for people to ask us to consider what's called an accessory dwelling unit. So having maybe a garage that's detached and a living unit inside that for children, parents, whatever condition. Are those going to be allowable in your deed restrictions?
We wanted to have it to where somebody could have a guest house, because some people want to build a big house and then have a guest house, if that's okay.
Yeah, and again, there's a process they have to go through in order to get that. It's
Okay.
you know, it's accessory dwelling unit, but if you're not deed restricting it, then we know that they could potentially do that.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So,
All right.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Smith, do you have any final statement that you all would like to make? Either one
I
of you?
think so.
Okay. With that, then docket PZ 20010 is completed. And at this point, I'll call on, as always, Mr. Urban and Mr. Carter to outline what's being requested on this docket. Mr. Urban?
So again, this is a waiver from the 5-year rule to allow additional subdivision of the property as presented. You have in your staff report on page 2, sample motions. And of course, you have to state the findings that, why this would be appropriate. There are at least three conditions of approval. One is a minor plat shall be submitted for review and approval to the staff. There should be no further division of the remaining acreage without Oldham County Planning Commission approval, and you've heard that it's going to be deed restricted anyway. The waiver shall only apply to the application considered at the July 28, 2020 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing.
Okay. Mr. Carter, anything you need to add, sir? All right. Commissioners, you've heard Mr. Urban outline what's being requested on docket PZ 20010. What is the pleasure of the commission? Chair would entertain a motion at this point. Okay, Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for approval of the waiver of the 5-year rule in the application submitted based on testimony and evidence presented. I find that the intended use of the property is consistent with that which is present in the vicinity at this time. Design innovations, I suppose, is a way to describe the application of a deed restriction that assures in perpetuity the continued use of property in its current state. I find it compelling that there are written submissions from adjoining property owners and those in the vicinity expressing support, that there is no opposition present, and of course, the significance of the deed restrictions as presented.
Okay, Mr. Carter, is an adequate motion, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have a second? Ms. Davis seconds. All right. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minor plat with waivers? Oh, Mr. King.
Do I need to have,
Sure to incorporate the
I want to
binding
incorporate the
decision.
binding elements that were referenced. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Davis, is that okay with your second? Okay. Any additional questions or discussion, I'm sorry, any discussion on this motion to approve? Okay, seeing none, I'll call on Mr. McIntyre to do the vote, and this is on docket PZ 20010, approval of a minor plat with waiver and the attached binding elements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Halfley?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
All right, the motion to approve the minor plat with waivers and the attached binding elements on docket PZ 20010 has been approved on a vote of 9-0. All right, commissioners, this last docket that was on here originally has been pulled for today, the PZ 20011. So we're down to other business, and that would be election of officers. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. King if he would take over here so we can move forward with our election of officers.
Thank you, sir. Okay, for everyone in the crowd, the chair will open the floor for nominations for chair of Oldham County Planning and Zoning. Mr. Klingenfuss?
I'd like to nominate Kevin Jeffers.
Kevin Jeffries is nominated. Do we need a second? Yes, and we have a second for Mr. Neal. Thank you. All right, under the anyone else wish to make a nomination? All right, circumstances can go with a voice vote on this, is that correct?
Well, a motion to actually appoint him as chair is in order. Nominated him, now you've got to actually make a motion to appoint.
Fair enough. Okay, so the chair will accept a motion to appoint Mr. Jeffries chair, Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
Have motion multiple, Mr. Halfley, Ms. Davis on the second, and we can go with a voice vote now?
Sure.
All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Unanimously.
Back to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Whoops, sorry. All right, thank you all very much, and it's been kind of a challenging time here for the last few months, and I hope we're on the upward curve here to be able to get back to what we all consider more normal. So thank you for the election to chair again, and I'll try to do what you all would like me to do, and as we move forward, and look forward to working with you for another year here. So with that, we would now move into the office of Vice Chair of the Oldham County Planning Commission, and the floor is open for nominations. Mr. Finney.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Greg King for vice chair.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, multiple seconds. Mr. Halfling, I'll recognize him as the second. Do we have any additional nominations for vice chair? Okay, if not, well, the chair will now entertain a motion to approve for approval of Mr. King as vice chair of the Oldham County Planning Commission. Do we have a motion? Okay, and Ms. Iva Davis seconds. Okay, all right. We'll move into then vote. All those in favor of Mr. King as vice chair of the Oldham County Planning Commission signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, Mr. King, you are elected for another year.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to my fellow commissioners. It's always good to have your support.
All right, and with that, Ms. Alvey, just anything do we know yet whether we'll be meeting in August?
We've not received any planning commission applications. I'm not aware of any that may be submitted. Are you aware of any, Tom? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Filing deadline is tomorrow. As always, I will send an email out to let you know whether or not we will have a August meeting.
Okay. All right, anything else, Mr. Urban?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, we will stand adjourned for our meeting here on July 28th. Thank you all very much. Congratulations. Oh, thank you.